Our second lesson is from the book of Genesis. It is the story of Noah after the flood and the 40 days and 40 nights. The Lord told Noah to leave the ark, and it says in Genesis chapter 9, "So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, 'Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth.'" A little bit later on, "Thus I have established my covenant with you." And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living thing that is with you for perpetual generations. Behold, I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of the covenant between me and all the earth. So it shall be, when I bring a cloud over the earth, a rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I shall remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature and all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all earth. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature and all flesh that is upon the earth." Then God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." Amen. And the final lesson is from the Apocalypse Explained, number 296. "There was a rainbow around about the throne in aspect like an emerald." A rainbow around about the throne signifies the divine, or divine life. And that it was colored as a rainbow is that it indicated the Last Judgment. For the color of the stone is green, which means truth obscured. Divine truth in its splendor appears either of a sky color, various blue colors, or various colors disposed in beautiful order, like those of a rainbow. But when it is obscured, it appears of the color of an emerald. The former heaven, upon which the judgment was to be executed, and which was about to perish, caused this obscurity. This is why mention is made of a rainbow and its aspect being like that of an emerald. There are infinite varieties of truth from good in the heavens, and these are represented by colors. They present the appearance of a beautiful rainbow. This is why the rainbow was made the sign of the covenant after the flood. Here end our lessons from the Word. Blessed are those who hear the word of God and keep it. In our lessons from the Apocalypse Explained, the reason that the rainbow was green was that it represented truth obscured, or the divine life obscured. The green rainbow represented in this illustration could be one way that John saw. Perhaps everything was green and murky, and there was an outline of a rainbow. It said there was a glassy sea, things were transparent, creatures were flying throughout the scene in this Revelation chapter 4. The Lord's getting ready here to present a judgment upon, it says, the former heaven. Well, who is that? Or what is that in you? Some people don't like hearing the term the new normal. We're undergoing a pandemic, a crisis on the globe. Things are obscured for sure. Things are changing. Various political leaders, scientific bodies and organizations, health agencies, various people are trying to figure out what best to do. Some people have some sense of clarity, and other people, you can tell they're with the rest of us, they just don't know what to do. Is this the new normal? Is this the way things are going to continue? Will we all look back 10 years from now and go, why didn't we see so clearly that we should have this, and this? One of the things we've tried to do with church is set aside all the externals going on around us. It's very difficult when things outside are so clearly overwhelming in grabbing our attention. In a time of war or a pandemic or a depression, it's very difficult to stop, take a deep breath, and try to think, what can I get out of this spiritually, or what can I do spiritually? So this lesson, we're following along in the book of Revelation, going towards June 19th celebrations of what the Lord did in 1770, and pronouncing that a new church has been established and the new heaven has come down upon the earth. The last judgment had taken place. So we're going through the book of Revelation with all the states of the former Christian church being spoken of. John predicted these states, and the Lord in the last judgment judged those states of people who had taken things and twisted them, obscured them. Right now we can use that example. We can look at our own lives and think, what are we doing to be clear that we're following the Lord? Even if other people say this or say that, people have us focus so much on this natural thing or that scientific thing or this health way of operating or believing. People can point us in all sorts of directions. Stop and pause. Good to think about. A nice colored rainbow. This is just the colors in a rainbow pattern. The green emerald rainbow of Revelation chapter 4. As I mentioned, have you ever seen a murky pond, a swamp, where the green isn't really that pretty? And that's what's being talked about in this passage, is how things can become very murky. And the green also stands for the natural or the scientific. And how oftentimes being focused just on natural and scientific things, we can become obscured about better, more spiritual qualities. I'd like to read a passage from the work Arcana Celestia. There's a section here in the 1620s, 1623, 24, 25, that talks about rainbows being seen in heaven and the clarity that they represent. Because I want you to think about the Lord's divine love coming as a sun, shining down upon each one of us. Our minds are like the... And the life that we enter into is like the colored rainbow. And that's being said in this passage. I'd like to read it to you. A rainbow form was seen, in the midst of which there was a green space. So it's got that green element, an earthly space, and green is right in the middle of the spectrum. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. As of vegetation, a green space was seen in this rainbow. And there was perceived a semblance of a sun off in the distance, illuminating and pouring in light, such as could not be described, it says. On the outer border of the circumference of what was seen, there were most charming variations of different colors. From these and other things, it has been shown what are the forms of the rainbows in their most minute parts, and that they are of infinite variety. The rainbows in heaven are of infinite variety because each person is like a little drop of mist or water. All of them together in a cloud produces a rainbow, but every particular drop, every particular person, each one of you and me, each one of us are producing a spectrum, a rainbow in our spiritual glow. So there's an infinite variety of rainbows according to a person's charity and according to what comes from their charity and produces faith, their derivative faith. And to the person to whom these representations are made, in other words, when you see a rainbow in heaven, and who is as a rainbow to those to whom he is presenting himself in his beauty and in his glory. Each one of us wants to receive the Lord's light, and we do receive it, and then we turn it into something. And starting out talking about the murky green of the rainbow seen in the book of Revelation chapter 4, it could be representative of the state that we have right now, where we're so concerned with natural things that we're getting bogged down. Even the idea of being in a bog is like being in a swamp. It's like being sucked down and feeling heavy with water not letting us get back up again. We can get bogged down. The green of the book of Revelation chapter 4, that vision of the Lord, was the Lord saying, I'm going to take you out of this bog. I'm going to take you out of this swampy kind of green, this just being immersed in natural things, just being immersed in things of self. I'm going to take you out of that. Here's how I'm going to do it. And the rest of the book of Revelation shows how the Lord opened up the Word, opened up the teachings of heaven so that minds could be freed. Sometimes when we use the term spectrum, we're referring to people and their various behaviors or their various gifts of their mind and how they're on a spectrum. Sometimes we'll talk about somebody being on a spectrum that has to do with developmental delays, and they're on a spectrum that way. Sometimes we might say a person's on the spectrum in terms of the other side of developmental advancements, and that person has risen up above everybody else. But each one of us is not only on a spectrum, but we present a spectrum. I want to talk a little bit about the various colors that the Word gives us, the internal sense to the spectrum that our lives can present. Because right now, as we're isolating, while we're apart from each other, we might think, well, we're really handicapped. Of course we're bogged down. Of course we feel murky. Because we're so isolated, we can't really be operating in society. We can't be in our businesses or in our recreations. We can't be taking our children and doing things with our families. We're really kind of stuck. So you're right. It's in one sense that green spectrum of the rainbow, the natural spectrum, really is shut down. We can't be out in the world the way we used to be. And on the other hand, because we have the media and the things of the world constantly coming in, we can actually be much more, in some ways, out in the world, or the world coming in and flowing in with this green focus on scientific and health and demographics and politics and countries and nations and power and economics. Green's in the middle. What's above green? Red. And how this is displaying to you. Hope you can see very clearly the red and the orange and the yellow, and then, of course, the green. Before we really get into doing spiritual uses, spiritual, naturally involved things, before we're really down in the dirt, as it were, in the greenery, we have to spiritually come from a place of love. And so that red, it said that basically heaven has two colors, red and white. Red is that fiery, flaming love of the Lord, the divine love that flows down. It's like a flame. And the white light. And we know when that white light of the Lord's natural sun hits a prism, it produces this spectrum. It produces the rainbow. Overall, the celestial angels are basking in that red of love. So stop and think about how much you're partaking of that spectrum now, and how much you're focusing on feeling love from the Lord and returning love to the Lord. Are you any more hampered today than you were last week or last month or last year in trying to focus on loving the Lord? We can pick up the phone, we can type a text or get on Facebook or on other ways of reaching out to people and send them that love. And we ourselves can each pray. Pray for one another. Pray for the people that you know are hurting or are sad or are feeling much more isolated than you are. And that red will come shining through. That spectrum of your presenting yourself, as it says in this passage, with beauty and glory. That we can be glowing with that love for the Lord. You can look at the color orange and think about it being love turned towards other people. It's mercy. It's compassion. Love has to go somewhere. And in the rainbow, you can, as it were, see it flowing down, filling in. It's mercy and compassion. And it's easy while we're stuck, as it were, in our cocoons or stuck at home, not to be thinking too much about other people if we don't want to, or to be overwhelmed with what everybody else is doing. So pass that overwhelm through the spectrum of love and mercy. And think about, okay, if you hear a sad story, what can you do to reach out with mercy and compassion? We can't visit each other with casseroles when we find out somebody's very ill. We might be able to send flowers or do something else that would be showing this mercy. But primarily, again, going from prayer to the Lord to help us become loving is prayer towards other people to help us be merciful towards them. Red, orange, yellow. Mercy and grace go together. And yellow can be seen as the idea of the Lord's sun appears in our solar system as yellow. But that compassion and grace, when we are out in the world, to think about the other person and wonder what's going on for them, and be gracious. It's pretty easy for us to be focused on what we're doing for ourselves to survive, but really, to go through the spectrum of the rainbow in spiritual ideas is to look from love through mercy towards grace and compassion. The two are pretty closely connected. Both of them have to do with the idea that from ourselves we can't produce any of this good heavenly life. To be gracious is to be humble, to recognize the Lord will feed me everything I need to be a spectrum, to be a rainbow for other people. The Lord will give me all that I need. The little drops of water have to have the sun shining in and hitting them to produce the rainbow. We, as little drops in the universe, we have to rely all the time and know that we can only receive good life going out from the good life that comes in. We are not our own rainbow. We're not our own sunshine. The good thing that green represents is useful service, going out and doing things that can be done. And we're all hampered right now in being able to go out and live a life that is a life of usefulness that we have been living, or to be active in our communities the way have been being active. But still, we can in fact help share what we do know, what we do love, and what we do have with other people. So that idea of what is blue or green, being like the earth, being productive, being like us, flowering or coming to maturity, is to look for new states of spiritual life. The understanding of spiritual affections, the Word says in Apocalypse Explained and in the Arcana Celestia, that green represents natural beauty that comes out when love, grace, and mercy and compassion are reaching out. Love through wisdom into usefulness. Spiritual love, or good towards the neighbor, is represented by the colors that follow. They're all deeper. If you look at a rainbow, you'll see, man, the red is really brilliant, and I can hardly see that purple. I can hardly see that indigo. Deep greens and blues, those beautiful colors that are the earth in vegetation and waters in reflecting the sky, the ocean. The idea of that blue, that beautiful, peaceful color that we need to take into ourselves in a state of spiritual rest. While we can be overwhelmed by things going on in our natural life, we pause and we reflect upon the rainbow to think about how are we presenting, going out into the world. And finally, that deepest of colors, as it were, the indigo or violet, it stands for something deeply spiritually returning to us of the Lord's love. And sometimes we don't pause enough to think, how am I being present with the Lord through all of this? How am I pausing, having a sense of love, mercy, compassion, usefulness, peace? How am I finding that deep serenity? The base of heaven is an innocence, a desire to follow the Lord, a desire to seek Him out through all things, and a desire to trust in His providence. When things are chaotic outside and the world seems so obscured and turned upside down with something like this pandemic, we need to stop and pause and reflect on what the Lord is spiritually doing for us, because He is providing new states of life, because He is continuously preparing us to receive life. The spectrum of the rainbow is a spectrum that is seen everywhere in heaven. There are some heavens that are said to be rainbow heavens. And it seems to be innately found in our character to desire to share that with each other. And so one of the symbols of hope seen throughout Canada and other places in the world are people putting up rainbows. Putting up rainbows and saying, things will be better. Let's continue to hope. Went for a walk yesterday down along the ravine here and saw somebody who had painted little stones in beautiful colors and had placed them just along for the enjoyment of other people taking exercise and recreation. And one of them was just a beautiful rainbow. And I thought, they're thinking about my sermon tomorrow. Oh, it's not all about me. They're trying to share their spectrum of love with other people. So you think about what you can do. And if the children listen and can listen to this later on or are still on, think about how you are a rainbow presenting. Perhaps you want to draw a rainbow and put it in your window. Perhaps you want to paint a rock and put it somewhere where somebody else can enjoy it. Perhaps you can do something that sends some of that love and beauty that is in you. And of course, all adults, all people, we can all do something. Even if it's as simple as drawing a beautiful picture and putting it on our window. Even if it's as simple as being as friendly as we can to everybody around us. Stay safe and stay at home and be careful with your health. And the Lord will bless you. The Lord will continually bless you in all things. Remember that divine light that comes from Him hits us, and we can present as a rainbow in beauty and glory, as the Word tells us. Amen.